Don't anybody panic. Loretta, don't panic when you see that come up there.
That's okay.
Okay. I'm gonna wait just a couple more minutes, Annette, and then I'll let you take off there.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, there's still a few coming in. Some it's just like other meetings, you know, we have a few that come in late. I did have, I think, 4 or 5 that emailed me and were a little disappointed that they couldn't be here for various things. I know Linda in Mississippi let me know that she had some things she had to take care of and other people, so.
Calm down, you can read it better.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Morning, Bonnie.
Morning, Annette. How are you?
Well, that was actually Pat saying hello, but hi,
Oh.
Bonnie.
Hi, Pat. I had to leave early today to go down and do a rent deposit at the store, and so I took my video off while I ate my breakfast. You didn't need to see that.
Well, we still having coffee over here.
Okay, good for you.
Good morning, Jeannie. I'm trying to welcome everybody as they come in, and I hope I don't miss anybody.
Oh,
Mhm.
Good morning.
Morning, Dawn.
I'm sort of here.
I see ya. Hi, Barbara.
This is the awkward. Oh, I'm getting a feedback. Why?
Is the
Whoever signs up.
is the recording still, sign supposed to be still on my screen?
Yeah, but I don't think it'll hurt anything, Loretta.
You have to say got it where it asks a question.
oh, you got it.
Loretta
Do
doesn't.
what?
Loretta doesn't know. Loretta doesn't dare touch anything. She's not. She doesn't work well with computers.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll
A
just let
lot
her
of
know.
us can say that.
Well, I can't use them.
It's hit and
I got-
miss with me.
I got Loretta set up with an email account the other day. His first email in her life.
Good for you, Loretta.
She went to the library and they helped her get on.
Just to let you know, since it's quiet, I do have a call into my vet because my dog's been having some issues. So if I get a call, I might.
Okay, we fully understand. At least your dog's not barking.
He doesn't usually bark unless the doorbell rings. Maybe if he hears that bing
Hi,
bong.
Pam.
No,
Hi.
he's still sleeping.
Hey, Pam.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing better since we got that little bit of an email last night.
Wish it said more.
I agree.
Hi, Pam.
Hi, how are you doing, Annette?
I'm good. I'm good.
Linda May, those were great suggestions that came from Clackamas County for the theme. I
Oh,
like
thank-
it.
Thank you.
Looking
Can I still get a hold of you by phone? Dawn?
No, let me give you a new phone number. I don't care who knows. My landline, my cell phone's the same, but my landline's 503-747-8255. 0201.
Okay, thank you. I will call you.
Send you my mailing address too, just in case.
There's one more.
We are much better about not having to correspond by snail mail, I must say.
Well,
Yeah, I knew
Yeah.
that thing took off of the screen.
This one.
Yeah.
I
I doubt I'll have to.
I don't want to touch anything. I don't know nothing about it.
Gonna move the.
okay,
Thank you very much.
It's gonna start soon. He's just waiting for people to get in.
Yeah, I know.
okay, so I see it's about 10 o'clock.
Hi, Carolyn.
I'm gonna introduce Annette. Maybe I should let Bonnie do that a little bit more. Bonnie met Annette, and I've met Annette a couple of times. I met her at Triennial at the ACWW Triennial, and I also met her a couple of other places, and I can't even remember where it is. I've been to too many conferences. But anyway, it's always been a good one. And then Bonnie asked her for me if she'd do a presentation today. Bonnie, do you have anything to say? So,
Well, I have seen two of Annette's presentations on bees, and the one today and another one that she did. And they're good information for all of us. And I just figured this would be a perfect place for her to share that information. So we're glad you accepted, Annette.
I'm glad you guys asked. I'm always willing to help and share information where we can. So,
Good.
and
all right, well,
especially with this new platform that we're all learning and dealing with.
so I'm gonna let you take off, and I think Annette's ready to go on there. Go ahead and ask her some questions if you have. She's done lots of these presentations, so she's an expert. It's all yours.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen, so you guys can all see a blue screen. It says products from the hive with a little pair of bees at the bottom.
Yes.
Yes.
So successful. Okay, so like Bonnie said, I have given this a couple of times. I think, well, actually, I just gave this when we were in Kentucky. Is that where we were at? Kentucky for the NVON conference.
Yes,
There's
we
a few
were.
that has seen it before, but I also have one called Pollinator Protection, and that's the one that we directly tied to the ACWW Triennial Resolution that we presented and was accepted. So we'll see how we get on with this. So it will be today, products from the hive. And let me click over. Why is my clicker not working? There we go. So honey is probably the best known product of the hive there. And about 157 million pounds of honey was commercially produced last year. Nearly half of that goes into commercial production. It goes into the bakery, the health food, the cereal industry. So half of the production that we produce does go for commercial uses instead of just the home use. So the average American, though, consumes about 1 1/3 pounds of honey per year, and that's from USDA stats on that. So if you think about this jar that you see in the center where it says Scott Apiaries, and Scott, I didn't do that in honor of you. That was just the picture I stole. That is what's called a 1 pound jar of honey. And so if you think of that and 1/3 again, that's about how much the average consumer American eats per year of just regular honey. So the top 5 producing honey states, what does anyone think those would be?
In the West?
In the US, what's one of the top 5 producing honey states?
Florida.
Florida is actually number 5. So the top
Yeah.
5, and this is going to be surprising to most people, but the top 5 is going to be North Dakota, Montana, California, South Dakota, and Florida. So that's what usually surprises most people when they hear that North Dakota is the top honey producing, more than twice as much as the next state behind them, which is Montana. So the top 5 honey producing countries in the world would be China, Turkey, which is another one you don't often think about, United States, Iran, and the Russian Federation for worldwide honey production. So I don't know how many people stop to think about where is honey in the world produced, but Iran and Turkey were not two of those that would come to mind for me, much the same as North and South Dakota wouldn't for me. So honeybees will visit over 2 million flowers to make 1 pound of honey. It flies a distance equal to roughly 2 times around the world to gather that pound of honey. So the average worker bee will make only 1/12 of 1 teaspoon. Now, for all the folks that know their way around the kitchen, if you think about how big is a teaspoon and then take 1/12 of that, that's what an average bee produces during her lifetime, 6 weeks in the summer or 6 to 8 weeks in the winter. I'm sorry, months. That's 64 teaspoons in a pound of honey. So if you break the math backwards, that's 768 bees to make a pound of honey. Now in the summer, the lifespan is very short, 6 weeks. They literally work themselves to death in the summer. Then in the winter, they have a longer lifespan, 6 to 8 months, because they're not as active and not flying out in the, I say atmosphere, but in the environment as much. So you see here on the slide that says honey up in the top left corner, you've got all these little spoons with these various colors of honey. On the bottom left, you've got the bottles with different colors. So the honeys themselves range from very, very dark, almost black, which is a buckwheat honey, all the way to very, very light, which almost looks like water. And that's an alfalfa. The color of the honey is simply based on the flowers that the bees visit for their nectar. And that's how you determine the flavor of the honey. So to get a single variety, say orange blossom honey, it has to be certified to be at least 51% orange blossom nectar that produced that honey. The most common honey that people think of is clover honey, and that's laid off of clover fields. So how do you get the bees to only do one type of honey? Here in the panhandle of Florida and the swamps of southwestern Georgia, we have a very specialized type of honey called Tupelo. It is a very rare honey as far as where the production of the area is at because of some very specific trees. How can we say it's Tupelo honey versus just wildflower honey? Well, the beekeepers put empty honey frames on at the start of the nectar flow. And for Tupelo, the nectar flow is only about 3 weeks long. So at the end of those 3 weeks, they'll pull the honey back off so that they can say that it is Tupelo honey. It is not just a wildflower honey or any other mix, but it has to be lab certified at over 51% to be specific gender or specific flavored honey. So there's a lot of different ways to package and sell your honey. You see there in the middle, you've got the 1 pound bottle or the squeeze bears. That's the one you see a lot. The bottom middle is cut comb, where they actually just cut the comb out of the frame, stuff it in the jar with extra honey to go around it. And you see a close up on the bottom right of that same thing. In the upper right is a very unique production. It's called Ross Rounds. And they actually put a container in there, and the bees fill out that round that you see, and then it is pushed out of the comb straight into a container, and you can see it all the way around. The containers are clear, so you can see the sides of the honey as well as the top and the bottom. But that's a very specialized honey production, but it's done for looks. Any questions so far?
I have one.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
This is Linda Maypool. This year, I always have feed out for my hummingbirds, and the bees took over the feeders this year. First time that I have seen them do that. Is it because of the weather we had where so much was destroyed with the heat at the first of the summer?
That could be a possibility, but are you sure that they're honeybees versus wasps? Because wasps are infamous for getting into honeybee feeders. And so that's quite a difference. Most honeybees won't go to hummingbird feeders unless it is absolutely the only source of food available for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but a lot of times wasps do take over honeybee feeders.
Well, they look like honeybees to myself, and they They were not mean. I mean, I could just swoosh them by off when I wanted to get the feeders, and they didn't bother me.
Well, that's
which
good.
I would have been more afraid if they would have been wasps, I'm sure.
So there may have been, I don't know exactly the heat conditions that you went through and what your weather was like, but that is a very strong possibility if you had unsettled weather and not enough flowers pollinating or nectaring at the right time for the bees. They're going to go to some sort of source for food.
That's what I thought, because my fuchsias just have now started to bloom really good because the weather was over 100 degrees and they just were, everything was being burned.
That is a very likely possibility then.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
I'm Loretta McDonald, and I was curious if you have this written up, if you can share that, and if we would be allowed to have this lesson. I have one member in Redmond and one in Prineville, and I wondered if I could get a copy of this to share with these members we have.
Okay, we'll discuss that afterwards, or I'll discuss it with Scott and Bonnie. A lot of times when I do presentations, though, unfortunately, I do them by the seat of my pants, and I don't really have a formal set of lessons for them. But we'll see if we can't get you some kind of information.
Okay, because it was so interesting about how many bees it took just to make this, the amount of a pound. I mean, everything you've said so far is really interesting.
We'll see if we can't get some information to Scott and Bonnie, or definitely Scott, to see if he can't help you out with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we're going to go on to the next slide here. It's going to be on beeswax. This is another product from the hive there. And so how do you produce beeswax? Well, it's both pollen, which is a protein, and honey, which are carbohydrates. They're required to produce beeswax. So the glands on the abdomen of the bee secrete this waxy substance, and it's called scales. It's scraped off with their legs, and then it's passed to their jaws or their mandibles, and they chew it, so it becomes pliable. And so that's how beeswax is produced. It is actually product that the animal produces, or the bee produces itself. So it takes 6 to 10 pounds of honey and about 33,000 bee hours to produce 1 pound of wax.
Whoa.
So that's a lot of production as far as the bees go. But 1 pound of wax provides enough wax to make 35,000 hexagonal cells on the frame itself. Now, once they build out these frames, and I think I have a picture of them later, once they build out the frames, the bees themselves are very intelligent. They have figured out that hexagonal shapes provides the most amount of storage for the least amount of wax. Why not ovals? Why not circles? Why not squares? In the bee world, hexagons, in their decision-making process, in their innate abilities, know that hexagon shapes are best used for most amount of storage, least amount of materials for them. And when you've got to make, when it takes 33,000 bee hours to make a pound of wax, you've got to use economies when you can. So once they make this 1 pound of beeswax, it will store approximately 22 pounds of honey within the cells that they form it into. So for every 100 pounds of honey that is harvested, the beekeeper harvests about 2 pounds of honey, or of cappings of wax. So that's part of the honey production, is they slice off the top of the frame of honey, so they expose the honey, and then they'll sling it out. But you're left with these cappings, which is what the bees use to cover each individual cells with. So 100 pounds of honey for the beekeeper, 2 pounds of wax. A lot of beekeepers will turn around and give it back. They will put it back into the frames for the bees to reuse, or they will use it into some of these other products that you've seen here. Beeswax candles, you see those all on the left. The bottom is the hand dipped. The top is actually rolled beeswax, and the middle there is actually poured. They actually use beeswax in tailors thread to make the thread pull through fabric easier. It's used as a sealant, leather sealant there, a waterproofer, or beeswax polish. Beeswax and lemon juice make a great furniture polish in the right proportions. So what you see in this bottom corner here is called Pastels, and it's little tiny flakes of beeswax, and that's what a lot of the folks use when they make some of their skincare products and their other products like that. You don't necessarily need tiny flakes when you're just going to melt it in mass and pour it into candles, but when you need quick melting wax, a lot of them will use the Pastels there. You can also use beeswax with some pine resin, melt it together, paint 100% cloth, and then use that in place of plastic wrap for those that are wanting to be a more greener world. So it is a replacement for plastic wrap when you coat your fabric with beeswax. It's used as a firming agent in cosmetics. And like I said, a waterproofer there, as you see the snow seal. So there are some different ways to use the beeswax there as it comes out. Beeswax actually per pound is more valuable than the honey itself. So beeswax is probably the most valued part of the hive there from a production standpoint. We all like the honey just because it tastes good. Any questions on that one?
This is Loretta, I wondered, did you say how many bees it took to make the comb?
It takes about 33,000 bee hours to produce
Wow.
1 pound of wax.
Wow.
So they're very industrious little creatures. All right. So another product that we have here is the queens of the hive. If you know anything about hive structure, the vast majority of bees are female. There's one queen per hive, and the rest of them are male drones. And so queens and bees aren't typically thought of as a product of the hive, but the selling of queens and worker bees is a very specialized form of beekeeping. So the queens are bred for very specific genetic origin or with specific desirable attributes. Beekeepers know that if they get into a hive and the hive is just nasty and it's stinging them and they're very agitated and stuff, the health of the hive is all based on the queen. If they're all foul-tempered and nasty, she is a typical queen bee. She is foul-tempered and nasty. The way to change the temperament of the hive is to change the queen. So apply that how you will in whatever circumstances you find there. So why would we requeen a hive other than a nasty? I'm sorry? So why would we requeen a hive? So if the old queen is failing or she gets accidentally killed, then the hive has no queen. You need to replace her. So what you see here up in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, these are actually called queen cells. These are very elongated. Typically, if you find them in naturally, they're going to be along the edges of a frame. So the bottom left is an actual commercial queen cell production. Those are called queen cups that they start the production of. And in the middle, you see how much bigger the queen is than the other worker bees that are surrounding her. The right-hand side of the screen shows how you get bees shipped to you, queen bees shipped to you. She'll be in a little cage, 2 or 3 attendant bees in there with her. And the end of the box will be capped with a little honey plug and or sugar plug. She eats her way out of it. And as she does so, her pheromones get pushed through the hive so that they know that that's the new smell of the hive. That's their new queen. So once it takes her several days to escape from her little queen bee cage. By that time, she's acclimated to it. They're acclimated to her and she blends right in. If you were just to dump a queen into the hive, it's not going to go well. And they're typically going to kill her because she's an invader as far as they're concerned. But the world of queens is very ruthless. In a natural frame, when you have several queens that are being formed at the same time, it's survival of the fittest. The first queen out to break out of her shell or out of the cup, goes and slits open all the other ones and kills the queens that are coming along behind her. So she leaves no queen behind. It's the first one out, toughest one wins.
Springfield, Missouri, auto.
So the other reason you would have queens or buy queens would be to increase your number of hives. If you have a hive that's really got a lot of bees in it,
32.
they need to split to make 2 hives. You do that. You leave the old queen with half of them. You take half and put in a new hive and give them a new queen. And there you've doubled your hive production that you have. Any questions on queens?
Please, ma'am.
To the highlighted route, then the route guidance will show.
I
All
have
right.
a question.
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
a question. I have hives and it's not really a question as it is a statement. I have a couple of hives and I've had them for about 3 years. And I can always tell when the queen cells are being developed because when they hatch, when the first one hatches, sometimes the existing queen will swarm and take off with her buddies. So, and I was told that it's important to go in and take any of the other cells out, maybe leave 1 or 2 cells if you see queen cells in there. And that's a correct statement, isn't it?
The reason hives will start building their own queen cells is typically they know they can sense that their queen is failing. If she's not producing the correct number of eggs, if she's not as prolific as she once was, they'll begin to sense that. They know the egg laying pattern across each frame that you have. If it becomes sporadic and spotty, she's quit laying to the extent that she used to. So they'll sense that and they'll start building new queen cells in forward thinking of they're going to lose that queen. So it's not always a good thing to go in and kill queen cells. But the downside is if she's still a healthy queen and she does swarm, then she's taken half your hive or 3/4 of your hive with her. And if you don't catch her, then you've lost all that production. So that's why a lot of times if you see queen cells start being built, you may consider splitting your hive and taking the existing queen and half the workers and putting her in a new hive so you don't lose her to nature, to a swarm.
Oh.
So that's just something
Okay.
to consider and talk with your other beekeepers about.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So next, another product is going to be the actual bees themselves. So they're used for establishing new colonies. When you have a new beekeeper come along and they want to get a hive of bees started, you can use them to replace bees that get lost through natural causes. We heard of CCD, the chronic disease for bees that cause this just big decimation of the bee population. If you think about natural disasters, we had a hurricane come through 3 years ago in October, and it took out quite a few of the commercial beekeeping hives because a lot of the northerners had already brought down their hives to overwinter down here in Florida. And you had a storm go through, knocked over, toppled the hives, destroyed the hives. Bees were now loose in nature, which is not a bad thing. But from a commercial standpoint or from your local small pollinator, now you don't have any bees. How do you get more? Well, you buy packages of bees. And so nukes are actually their little 5-frame hives, and they come as a unit with bees already installed, or you can buy a package of bees. So a package of bees normally contains about 2 to 3 pounds of bees plus a mated queen, and it's about 10,000 bees that you're going to get. And so they are shipped through the U.S. Postal Service, and trust me, your post office is going to call you as soon as that package comes in because they don't want it in their facility. They want it out of their facility, but they are shipped through regular mail. And so you'll get a call from your post office, you come pick them up, then you can just take and just shake them right into the hive that you already have prepared for them. Queen goes in there with them, and there you go. You have a new hive established. Questions on bees themselves? So this is another specialized branch for beekeepers that they will strictly raise bees to sell. They're not worried about honey production. They're not worried about queen production. They're worried about doubling and tripling their hive numbers so that they can take those bees and then split them off. A typical hive will have probably about 50 to 70,000 bees in it on average. It just depends. All right.
Isn't
Paul-
it true that there's different types of bees? Isn't it true there's different bees that originate from different places?
There are Russian bees, there's an Italian bee there, and it's all a local based. I say local, but like we can import them. We can have Italian strains in our hives and things like that. Now that's going to call into mind the Africanized bees, which stirs up so much trouble when people hear about it. We've really been able to arrest the spread of Africanized bees here in the United States through sheer vigilance at our ports and our borders. I know for a fact here in Florida, there's only been one instance of an Africanized bee being found. It was brought in on a ship that came into the port down in Panama City. The local officials caught it. There was no further spread of that. And that's typically how the Africanized bees spread. They either come up like through Mexico into the Texas and New Mexico border and Arizona border region, or they'll come in on your shipping containers. So, but you can have different strains of bees from different areas of the world that have different characteristics, much the same as Native Africans look much different than Native Eskimos or Native Americans, or, you know, it's all indigenous to the region that you're in as to the genetic traits that you have. And that's the same with bees. All right, so here we have pollen. So it contains nearly all known nutrients. It contains all 22 amino acids, minerals, vitamins, and enzymes. It's a great energy booster. It's often taken by athletes to boost their stamina. It's used for weight control. It's a natural source of protein. It is supposedly said to reduce the effects of stress on the body. And so the color of the pollen, like the color of the honey, depends on the source that the pollen is coming from. So you see in the bottom right-hand corner, the multicolored shades of pollen, it's all simply the flowers that were visited by the bees. So it's collected via pollen traps. And then so the bees walk across or through the pollen traps, and as they go through them, the pollen scrapes off onto the trays, which you see in your bottom left-hand corner. The top right corner, you see bees that are entering a hive. It's just wide enough for the bees to get in, and a lot of times the pollen will get knocked off, and you see that below them. In the middle of your screen, you see a bee absolutely covered in pollen. And in the bottom, you see his actual pollen sacs. These are actual little sacs built on, or baskets built onto the backs of their legs. So they'll get the pollen grains and then they'll shove them in their little pollen baskets. And then that's what they fly back to the hive with. If you ever hear a bunch of bees in a tree that's blooming, or they're in a flower bed with a lot of flowers, take the time to stop and slow down and look and see that the pollen baskets are very easy to see when they're full. And you kind of look at them, you're like, well, what's that little bright orange spots? Or, well, there's bright yellow spots, and it's pollen that they've collected, and you can actually see it there. So it is sold mostly in health food stores. That's where I see a lot of it. It is a perishable type product. You do want to keep it in the refrigerator. So there's all kinds of claims out there about them. The thing about local honey and allergies, here's what I'll get a lot of questions on as well. The allergy building up and resistance comes from the pollen, because we know it's the pollen in the air that gives the hay fever, the ragweed, the drainy, nasally symptoms. That all comes from the pollen on all the different plants. So if you want to try to build an immunity to your local allergens, then consuming local raw honey is best, because it will have the pollen from the flowers that are typically allergens in that honey. Here's the thing about honey. In order for honey to maintain its health benefits, it can't be heat treated to a very high degree. I think it's once it's, and I don't have the exact number, and I should in my head, but once it gets about 110 degrees or so heated up, it begins to lose its health properties. So the best thing you can do is just have raw filtered honey. the way they can also determine what is honey is how much pollen is actually in the honey. There's been several instances of stuff coming in from foreign countries labeled as honey. When you examine it under the microscope and when the scientists get a hold of it, there is no discernible pollen in it. It has been ultra filtered, or it's been adulterated with sugar syrups so that it's cheaper to produce. But the guarantee of pure honey is that it maintains pollen in the honey itself. Does that make sense? Okay, I can explain it, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to me when I explain it. But so if you want to control your allergens, get a local honey from your specific area. Me getting honey off the shelf that's made in Sioux City, Iowa doesn't help my allergies here in Florida because we don't have the same flowers producing, we don't have the same allergens in the air. So get your local honey. Now, there'll also be a difference in spring honey versus fall honey, because what happens at those times of year? Different flowers bloom in the spring versus bloom in the fall, right? So it makes sense if you have allergy issues in the spring, you need spring honey. If you have allergy issues in the fall, you're allergic to whatever's blooming in the fall, you need honey that was produced in the fall. And you'll just need to talk to your local beekeepers about that. The number one thing is get local honey to start with, and then you can narrow it down spring or fall. But also once it's heated, and the reason it's heated is to make it flow faster so that it doesn't take as long to fill up the bottles and drain out of the hives. Well, it's all a commercial issue on heating honey for production versus the local beekeeper who's got the time to let it drain naturally or put it in a centrifugal force and spin it out. But local raw honey is best for you. Questions on that? Pat, if you're asking a question, you're muted.
Sorry, I was trying to send a question on the chat, but I guess I haven't figured out the chat.
Oh, don't send it on that because I haven't figured it out either.
Oh, all right. Talk about the filtered versus unfiltered. The difference in if we should avoid one or not.
Uh-oh, hold on. I've jacked up. Are you still there? Let me go back to my PowerPoint and fix where I was.
Okay.
So filtered versus unfiltered. The unfiltered from a local production standpoint is going to be the, hold on. There, are we back? Okay. When me as a local beekeeper harvests my honey out, and I'm going to take it out of the frames, I'm going to cut the cappings off. Then I'm going to put it in we call it a slinger or an extractor. And you put the frames in there vertically, you crank them, and centrifugal force basically slings the honey out of the frame down the sides of the extractor, and then you can drain it out. You do get bee parts in there. You get a little bit of the cappings, you get a little bit of the wax. So me as a local beekeeper, I'm going to just take and filter those through. Basically, it's a mesh about the size of pantyhose. Then that filtered honey takes out all the big bee parts. It takes out all the wax chunks, anything like that, and gives you honey, but the pollen is still in it. In order to filter out the pollen, it's got to be through extremely fine filters. And in order to get it through such a fine filter, they have to heat it, because with heat, it loses viscosity. It's very easy to flow. You know, hot honey flows better than cold honey. And so the ultrafiltration that strips out all the pollen is the problem in the commercial industries. But if you're getting local filtered honey, you can get unfiltered honey, but it might have some bee parts or some wax pieces and things like that. But most beekeepers that are going to sell commercial or sell locally, they're going to at least do a rough filter on it, just that first filter. Okay. Did that create more questions?
I have some honey here that from my hives, and you can see how dark it is. It's from wildflowers. It's just whatever grows here. I'm in Southern Oregon up in the mountains. So, and I filter it twice, but I only filter it with the kind of mesh that you're talking about. And so I have local people who have allergies, and they just love this honey. So it's really beneficial to get barely filtered, just to get the parts out, like she said, in the wax. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
So, so here's the difference. Cynthia said that her honey is called Wildflower Honey. And the difference being is if you don't know what source it is sitting on, like the Tupelo that I mentioned earlier, or if you put it on the honey, the orange blossom, or if you specifically put it on fields of clover, then it's wildflower. That's what all of us call it, is wildflower. You want to be safe, everything's wildflower honey. Now, Cynthia's honey was extremely dark. I imagine there's a lot of buckwheat up through that area at times. And because I know that's a lot of the North Dakota, South Dakota production is buckwheat. So that's why some of her honey is so dark. And so it may be a different color in the spring based on what's blooming at that time of year. So, all right. So another product that we have here is Propolis. It's also basically like bee glue. So it's composed of plant resins that are gathered by the worker bees. It's beeswax, which makes about 30 to 60% of it. And balm, it's a glandular secretion of the bees or a product of honeybee digestion. So it's also got pollen in it. It's got debris from the hive in it. It reinforces the structural ability of the hive. It reduces vibrations. It makes the hive more defensible by sealing the entrances, by sealing alternative entrances. It inhibits bacterial growth. It prevents disease and parasites from entering the hive, and it seals all the cracks and crevices. So here's the thing with Propolis. If you've ever watched a beekeeper try to lift the lid off of a hive, or you've ever watched them try to take the frames out, they're using a significant amount of force with their tools to actually pull those frames apart or pull that lid off the hive. Bees like what's called bee space. 3/8 of an inch is the biggest opening that they want. That's comfortable for them. That's the passage that they travel through. Anything bigger than that, they're going to fill it with Propolis. They're going to glue it together. Where you have two hive bodies that sit on top of each other, there's a very thin seam right there. There could be some air inflow through there. There could be a little bit of water intrusion. They're going to fill those gaps. If it's an opening they don't want, they're filling it. And that's basically the bee glue that we're talking about here. One of the other advantages to Propolis is it's used as hazardous waste management. So bees are very hygienic. They normally carry their waste out from the hive. They carry it away from the hive. Bees that die in the hive, they carry out the front entrance. But if a small lizard or a roach or a mouse gets in the hive and it dies there, the bees are probably unable to carry it back out through the front entrance just due to sheer weight. So what happens? They don't want this festering dead body in their hive. So they're instead going to basically wall it off with Propolis. They're going to turn it into a mummy. They're going to encapsulate it in Propolis, therefore making it odorless, making it harmless, and desiccating it basically is what happens with that. And so that's the best use of Propolis from the bee's standpoint, is gluing the hive together, reducing vibrations and infiltration areas, and then waste management for that. I mean, it's very interesting to see. Propolis comes in all different colors. Usually it's very dark. And you'll see it along the edges of the frames. You can scrape it together. It's very sticky. And heaven forbid you get it in your hair, because it's like a kid and chewing gum with hair. Ask me how I know this. So, all right. Questions on Propolis? Okay. So royal jelly. It's produced by the worker bees. It's a food source for the larva. And as a queen develops, it becomes her sole source of nutrition to enhance longevity and the reproductive capabilities of the queen. So here is how a queen is made. She's no different than any other worker bee when the egg is laid. But once they've decided that this is going to be a queen, then they essentially stuff her full of royal jelly. That's all she eats from that time forward. Whereas the other bees get a different food source as they're developing. So she's essentially just floating in this royal jelly. This is what the pictures on the top and bottom, the top left and top right are. And then you see on the bottom, that's actually a queen cell being developed as well. And that's a worker bee tending to the larva in there. Now, once the larva gets bigger, they'll go ahead and close and cap off that cell and let the queen continue to develop. But royal jelly is how the queen, that's her superfood. That's why she grows so much bigger. So some commonly associated benefits for human consumption of royal jelly is supposed to be more energy, supposed to be weight loss or weight control, healthier skin and hair, a more youthful appearance, strengthened immunity system, reduced feelings of stress. It's all some of the things that we get from the pollen as well. So the products coming from the hive that humans have taken and used all seem to benefit our health as well. So royal jelly, extremely perishable. It's a very, very specialized industry. So what they essentially do is they cut the caps off of these cells. They have tiny, tiny spoons. I'm not kidding, very tiny spoons that they will dig in to the cells and extract the royal jelly. Once again, a very perishable product, needs to be refrigerated and not inexpensive to produce or to capture from nature. All right, questions? All right, beauty aids. So there are literally hundreds of products that are made using honey. Why do we want to use honey in this? Because honey is considered a humectant. It draws moisture from the air and into your skin. It's also a natural source of alpha hydroxy acids, that AHA, which is a skin exfoliant used in a lot of products. You can see here this honey and oats mask. It's got honey in there for the humectant properties to draw the moisture in the skin. It's got the oats for the exfoliation. So you see the Savannah Bee Company there in the middle has royal jelly body butter. It says a nutrient rich and protective formula that's fit for a queen. Well, that's a little play on words there, but also we talked about the wax being used to help firm up in your balms and your lotions. It's put a lot into soaps, once again, for the moisturizing properties that it has, lips, balms, hand creams, all of those types. I'm thinking that there's probably not anybody here in the house that doesn't have some product in it that is imbued with either a wax or a honey or some other product from the hive.
Question. When we would be out shopping or searching for a beauty aid, whatever it is there something we should avoid or know? Are there certain countries that make them that we don't want it? Is there anything like any guidance on that?
I don't have a good answer for that. If you want to be super conscientious, like on this lotion bar up in the middle right hand side, it's got the USDA organic stamp on it. You can look for the cruelty-free animal cruelty-free products. Other than that, without getting into huge complexities of huge commercial production, I don't really have an answer for you on that, Pat. So
okay, but thank you. You're looking for the label about where it's produced and all those other things is a good suggestion to me. Thank you. I do like Burt's Bees.
This is Ellen.
Yes, ma'am.
Once the honey is heated and put into whatever aid they're doing, does that null the actual effect, or does it still give you great skin, etc.?
The heating of it mainly affects the nutrient properties of it, not necessarily the humectant properties and the skin nourishing properties. It's more of the nutritional value that you begin to reduce once you heat it. So heating it for a purpose of making a beauty product, it's still going to be just as much moisture drawing as it would not be heated. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I use some of my honey and my wax to make cosmetics as well. And I do it just as a hobby and to give away to friends and family. And what I do is I'll put my other ingredients and heat those, except for the oils and the vitamin E or whatever else I'm adding. I don't heat that. And I don't heat the honey necessarily. What I'll do is I'll put it and do a double broiler and heat the products. And then at the end, I'll add honey and I'll add my essential oils, and then I'll whip it with one of those immersion blenders, and I'll whip it really well. And that gets it nice and mixed up. And then you're not heating the honey excessively.
And then another
So-
option for that in the same production of health and beauty products is heat your other ingredients, add your flakes of beeswax to that, and use the heat from your other oils that are heated to melt your beeswax or to incorporate your honey into that. That was
Right.
so. All right. Anything else? All right. So this is probably the slide that Scott's most looking forward to here, the beverages. I know I can say that to my friend Jane from Illinois as well. So we do have beverages here. I just love now I don't drink. I'm not a drinker at all, but I just love the middle beer on the top shelf that says Waggle Dance, because Waggle Dance is actually a bee dance that is performed by the bees. How do bees know where their hive is? How do bees know to tell other bees where to go to the honey or to the nectar sources? Well, they actually come back and do a dance based on the position of the sun and the position of the hive, and it's called the Waggle Dance. So it is a true bee term there, Waggle Dance. So over the years, a lot of things have developed there. There's mead, there's beer having honey added to it. The bottom middle, when we were in Kentucky, of course, it being bourbon country up through there, I know that some folks went on a bourbon tour and found some of the honey that had been added to their products. Wine. So if you choose to partake in adult beverages, here is your choice that has some ones with honey added. You can also, like the left-hand side shows, make it yourself at home. But that is just one more source that comes from the hive that's a product of the hive, added to commercial products. So any other questions? With that, I think I'm done with my little show and tell part of it. So I'll turn it back over.
I just wanted to say this was wonderful. You did such a great job explaining everything. I learned a lot today.
Good, thank you. So
I have a question.
Okay.
This is Lavanda. What is the shelf life for honey, especially if you get it straight from the farm?
Okay, shelf life for honey. This is very interesting. I'm glad Lavanda brought this up. I didn't think to mention it. The shelf life of honey is nearly indefinite. There have been instances where they have found sealed pots in Egyptian tombs that held honey that's still edible. What happens with honey is it slowly over time crystallizes and gets crystalline structures, much like sugar is what it'll turn out looking to. Of course, it won't be white like sugar, but it is very thick and sharp crystals form in it. The honey's not bad. It just needs to be decrystallized. And in order to do that, you can just reheat it very slow, very low. And once it's completely liquefied again, in time, it will crystallize again, but then you can continue to use it just as it was before it crystallized in the first place. So when honey for us crystallizes at the house, not that it lasts that long, but occasionally a jar will get shoved to the back of the cabinet. If it crystallizes it, my husband uses it, crystallizes it, crystals and all, and melts them in his tea or his coffee or whatever he's making to heat it back up and liquefy it, and the crystals dissolve back into the honey, and then it's not an issue. He actually says it's easier for him to use it as crystallized because he doesn't have to worry about dripping it everywhere because it's so much thicker.
Oh, that was my next question, because I think I have a bottle that's crystallized, so but I still use it.
Oh, absolutely. So if you want to liquefy it again, Lavana, take and put it in like a double boiler and heat it very low and very slow. until it all liquefies again. And make sure you get all the crystals, keep pushing them down into the honey that's melted back until it's liquefied, and it'll recrystallize again, but you can still use it as a liquid honey instead of crystallized.
Does it lose its value, the value to you by doing that?
Nutritionally, everything declines over time. So if you heat it low enough and slow enough, it won't lose you won't add any detrimental issues to the nutritional value other than just time, because everything nutritionally degrades in time.
Okay, I did not hear the microwave in all of this. I guess we're avoiding the microwave, right?
I avoid the microwave. I don't own one. So that's just my life. So
I guess that's really avoiding.
It is. But it is the lower and the slower you can control the temperature, the better when you're liquefying or even heating honey for any purpose.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I used very hot boiled water to put crystallized honey in. It was a plastic jar. Sometimes it was a glass jar, but I would put it down in. And if it's glass, you have to be careful that your water won't break it.
Correct. That's why it's better to start with like warm water and then heat the water with the container in it, but heat it slowly. So you don't take a chance of breaking your jar.
Yeah. I was so interested in all the products they have. I had no idea there were so many products. I don't drink, but this is absolutely so interesting.
Thank you. All right, Scott, back to you then.
Yeah, well, why don't you stop sharing your screen?
Sure.
And then we can see everybody again. And I see Artist Snyder snuck in on us. She's our national president for FCE, and she's up in North Dakota. And I hope she heard that she said North Dakota is the #1 producer of honey.
I knew it was.
All right. Well, anyway. Well, Annette, I really appreciate it. I tell you, it's just another outstanding lesson via Zoom. And you know I substitute teach a lot, and I tell the students this all the time. I said, you know, the pandemic has done lots of terrible things, and it's done lots of wonderful things. Oh, it's kind of taught us all a little technology and getting together. And as somebody said to me recently, it has really brought us together in some ways via Zoom, and that we are everywhere today, even today, and a great example from Hawaii to Florida and everything in between it. And it's just a great time. And Annette, I really appreciate your time. I thought it was a wonderful presentation, and I'm going to turn it to if anybody wants to give any final comments or anything like that. And before I do that, I do want to tell you, I have a lesson lined up for December, and Bonnie might be able to explain what she's in Maryland, so be a different one. Anyway.
She said that it's on the history of pattern making, clothes pattern making. It sounds like a pretty good lesson for all of us to learn about history.
So I'm always looking for somebody to do it, and I do the hosting. I do the easy stuff. I send out the invitations, and you guys have to do the hard stuff. And Annette, again, thank you very much. Is there any questions to Annette? I see lots of clapping.
I would like it. I'd like her presentation in writing, because I won't remember everything she told us, but it is so interesting that it would be nice to share with our other FCE members, you know.
Loretta, we'll see what we can do about making that happen for you. I'll work with Scott and Bonnie.
Okay,
well,
and
they're really busy.
And I did record it, and I have figured out how to put it on YouTube, so I'll be sending those links out in the next couple of days. And then Annette, you can go look and evaluate yourself
No, that's going to be scary.
All right.
Well, I would like to echo the thanks to Annette. She is an on-the-spot gal. We were in Effingham, Illinois for a conference, and one of the speakers didn't show up, and Annette brings her computer down and ends up giving this presentation to all of us there. And some had seen it before when they were at the NVON conference, but she was just Johnny on the spot and took care of us and educated us about bees. So thanks again, Annette.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to help and hope everybody enjoyed it and learned something.
I want to echo the same thank yous from Scott and Bonnie. It was a very good presentation. I think I skipped a couple of minutes because I was a little late getting in, but I got the most of it, but it was very enjoyable.
Thank
And
you.
I did know North Dakota was #1, but because we have a lot of bees around. Everywhere you drive in the countryside, there is hives sitting out there for everybody. So, but yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bonnie, I need to, what did you say we're having in December? I kind of missed a little bit there.
Well, from listening to her talk to Scott on the phone, I think she said it is the history of pattern making.
Okay. Of making your own patterns? Is that what it,
how pattern making got started, like
okay.
commercial pattern making. So
Okay.
she
okay, and-
belongs to a national or an international sewing organization, and this is a presentation she has done for them.
Okay. Well, that sounds interesting.
Did you know on pattern making that if you know how to make your own patterns, you know geometry and the different math without even knowing you know it?
That's exactly right, Loretta.
I made
Yeah.
a lot of my own patterns in the past, but it's been an awful lot of years ago.
Yeah.
So Annette, I'm gonna, if it's all right with you, I'll send you invitations to these if you want to come join with us.
Sure,
If
go
you-
ahead and keep me on the email list.
Okay, I'll do that, and I appreciate it. And again, I'm always looking for someone to do presentations. I think I'm good for December and January. I've got a gal she's so nervous and so excited. Ellen Bradley.
Yes.
Oh, there she is.
Yes. Very nervous, very
She's nervous
excited.
but excited, and I'm just excited to help her with it. And I appreciate that email you sent the other day. So, all right.
So
Well, you
what's
guys
her
are just,
topic, Scott?
what's that?
What's her topic going to be?
Ellen, why don't you tell them?
I'm working on 2 at this time and I'm going to run it by my study group. But, oh gosh, I have actually 4. I forgot. I am so sorry. I forgot. And I don't have my minutes here.
That's
Um,
okay. It'll be wonderful.
And she's actually thinking about teaching at the state conference. So, you know, I have my ways of asking
Persuasion.
real nice. Artist knows that. After all, I caught Bonnie years ago, so. All right, well, you guys can just chat if you want to for a minute or whatever it is and take off, and I'll see you next month. It'll be, I think it's December 1st, I remember.
Yep, it
Whatever that
is, Scott.
Wednesday is. All right,
Thank you,
All
Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aloha.
thank you, Annette.
Thank you. Nice to
Aloha,
see everybody.
Lavanda.
Bye, Bonnie.
Nice to see
Bye.
everybody.
Nice to
Bye.
see you all. Bye-bye.
I wanted to,
Bye.
before they all leave, I wanted to thank Annette for giving the lesson. And I didn't hear you jackets kill bees. We have huge amounts of yellow
Oh.
jackets around our place. And my neighbor has bees over there, and I told her, I says, those yellow jackets that are showing up at your place is going to kill your bees. But
They-
I mean, they're all wild bees. There's no hives.
That's correct. And so what happens is they're in there just to basically steal the honey as a food source. So
Is that what
that's what
they do?
happens. So if the
Okay.
the hive is typically strong enough to defend itself against occasional yellow jackets, if the hive is very weak or it's been damaged in some spot in some way, then it's more susceptible to hostile takeover basically by other foraging insects. And that's what happens. They're after the food, they're after the honey for a food source.
Well, I'm killing the yellow jackets because every time I'm outside, they sting me. And I can't handle the 10 or 12 times that they would sting me. And I get at least 2 or 3 if you don't even have to do anything. They just hit you.
Right. They're mean. They are definitely mean. Yellow jackets are.
So I've been trying to get rid of them for a long time, but I haven't succeeded yet.
So, well, good luck in your endeavors on it, though. If you ever figure out how to eradicate them all, you'll let the rest of us know.
Well, I'm using some of that spray that.
Oh, I don't hear it. Oh.
I know it may not be the best solution, but when you go outside, just outside your house, and you lift something up that is something you use, and they made a nest there.
Right.
And things you use, and you go to reach for something and they attack you, you don't want them around.
I agree. I agree. So,
Annette, I just want to say thank you. Every time I hear it, I remember a little bit more.
oh, thanks, Pam. It's
So
good to see
take
you.
care.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you
Pam.
for joining us, Pam.
Uh-huh. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Well, I'm going to close down here.
All right. None of the, where you recorded it, we can't copy anything off of what was recorded now, can we?
And what do you mean by copy it?
Well, like here at the, right here, just the pictures. Would
Just-
you be able to just print the pictures for me of